Let's build a business based on H to H, not B2B, but human-to-human sales and marketing automation. A human approach is the only one that sells.
This is H2H Sales Automation podcast on mastering international sales, crafting and winning go-to-market strategy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. My name is Bart, and I invite guests for a short 20 minutes interview to inspire you and improve your business the human way. Today, I'd like to welcome Alan Graham, Partnership Director, APAC at ASG, Director of Tech Apps, Export Scotland, ex-Global Sales Director at Tetrasil. It's going to be a conversation about sales for sure. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks, Bart. Dzień dobry.
Hello, and thank you very much for joining us. So today's topic, Alan, is mastering international sales. You've been working with loads of different international sales in the past, and specifically we want to focus on go-to-market strategy. Lots of tools are available, lots of opportunities are there, yet many businesses are failing. Now, let's start from your background, Alan, because I have looked at number of messages on the LinkedIn and your profile and automotive industry. Why you have been involved with that industry for so long?
So originally, and I'm talking 20, almost 30 years ago, probably now. Originally through a family connection to a business, to an automotive business, and through my dad actually. And one thing led to another. Started to work with a company, and here we are. 30 years later, still in it. I think automotive is one of those industries that when you join the industry, because it's such a wide industry, that a lot of people stay in it forever because there's lots and lots of different elements to automotive. But I quite like cars as well, which helps. So there's a nice attraction there. So but I've worked in a few different aspects of automotive from a supplier's perspective over more years than I probably care to remember now.
So is this a bit of family? So the inspiration to work within that industry came from kind of family, am I right?
Kind of, yeah. So my dad used to work with a company, and when I was still at school in the summer holidays, I used to just tag on with him. So we'd be out in the car when he was out doing sales calls and stuff like that. And just really through that, got a bit of a connection to some people, some contacts, the industry. And then, as I say, then I went on to work for that company and worked with them for about 20 years almost. And as I say, I think it's kind of in the blood now to some degree, that industry.
Brilliant. It's always a bit of story, isn't it, about our backgrounds. Now, sales. So automotive and sales, how you ended up selling things?
Yeah, so I've directly been involved in the sales or in a sales role for probably about 27 or 28 years now. So pretty much forever. So almost all of my working days have been directly involved in sales. And fortunately for me, I quite enjoy that aspect of the job. So when I started doing it years ago, quite enjoyed it, was okay at doing it. And again, just one thing has led to another, and it's stuck, and it's became just a career for me now. That's through. I haven't had many jobs over the years, but over the couple of jobs that I've had, and now just recently just started to run my own business, which gives me the chance for a bit more diversity, and to talk and work with multiple different businesses, not exclusively automotive, but by and large still in the automotive space, because it's what I know best, really.
So talking about international sales, because this is very much interesting and top subject of our discussions. Obviously, at your previous role, you dealt with quite a lot of international inquiries. You had your team. Tell us a little bit of what was the biggest lessons, out of this experience when it comes to managing and leading that international sales teams, where, when, and how to improve, how sales leaders can improve management skills? Obviously, we can talk about cultural aspects of each single markets, but what I want to listen now is really more focusing on leading and challenges and how you cope with that.
So I think so I've been, from an export perspective, I first exported probably 15 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
And then been heavily involved in it since then, maybe longer, actually, maybe 20 years ago. I think what you learn very quickly from either an actual sales executive role, or more recently for me as a sales management, sales director type role, is that when you look at different export markets, it's most definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. So every market genuinely is different. I know everyone says, our market's different, we're different. I think from an export perspective, that is genuinely the case. Every market can be very different. So I think there's a learn in each market for sure. I think you have to adapt and approach markets a little bit differently. But I think that said, some of the basic core sales principles still really apply. And in most markets, they will still get you quite far in a market. And that's those real basic sales principles, like real basic stuff. I mean, be nice to people, be friendly, be nice to people. Do what you said that you would do. So if you commit to sending a document by 9 o'clock on Monday, get that there by 9 o'clock on Monday. If there's a reason why you can't, make the other person aware of that, before 9 o'clock on Monday. So be nice, do what you say you're going to do, and I think smile. So it's those real basic things. Every market's different for sure, but if you do get the basic principles of sales right, then you have half a chance, I think, in every market.
I love it, Alan. We're talking about the human parts. It's running business, selling international. If you have a really good product, the only thing that will distinguish you out of others is actually these behaviors, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just be nice, be authentic. I would even say,
Definitely,
within a conversation, and then building the bonds, even if the language barrier is there, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think in the UK or in English-speaking countries, we're spoiled in that sense of English being the universal business language. So it definitely is more difficult when doing business outside of the UK when it comes to language, especially for maybe Scottish people, Welsh, Irish, North or South Ireland. Those local accents may be more difficult to be understood. But again, I think you have to adapt. And I certainly learned as a Scotsman, I certainly learned very, very early from an export perspective that the Scottish language, the Scottish accent, does not travel well in that sense. Most people speak English, but it's English or maybe American English from TV. Whereas a Scottish English, as it is, does really not travel well. So you really have to slow down, speak clearly, choose your words carefully. Otherwise, it is just lost in translation, which is a problem in business, of course.
This actually leads to the question about the difference of cultural difference. When you plan to go to market strategy, and you obviously said the language. And I think certainly speaking slowly, and I always say to most of the people and including myself, there is a lot of buzz in your mind. Let's say you attend some big event in, I don't know, Berlin or in Washington, whatever, and then you've got this excitement that you want to say everything about your product, that you're actually there. But then people the perception could be lost very quickly, isn't it? Within that conversation, the first impression matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think especially when English isn't maybe the first language of the person that you're speaking to. So again, it's just about understanding that and adapting. And I think certainly in my experience, if you are Scottish, say in my case, it's just absolutely clear that you have to slow down, you have to change your way of communicating, otherwise it just does not work. So I think that becomes very obvious very early, but it's then obviously the execution of that that's the key thing. So, but again, yeah, it's very market by market. If you're in Scandinavia or if you're in any of the Benelux countries, English is spoken beautifully well, and in those countries, they certainly from a Scots perspective, they understand the Scottish accent. Whereas in other countries, maybe English is spoken well, but they don't quite understand the local accents in quite the same way. So again, it's just market by market, understanding that, getting a feel for the markets. Visit those markets if you can. Not always possible, financially or otherwise. But there's no better way to try and understand the market than to actually visit that market. Video is great nowadays because you can do so much from your desk. If you can get in market, it's really valuable to do that.
So, any interesting stories, either funny or like stories of your conversations or your experiences that maybe is coming to your mind when you run different meetings, events, and when you probably you visited quite a lot of countries, isn't it? So, and any stories, interesting stories of that cultural difference and kind of a bit shock, but also example of how you shifted that conversations towards some winning part.
I think I've touched wood. I'd be fortunate. I've never really had too many disasters in that sense, in a business way. But I think for me that was because I always really try and embrace the culture and do a bit of research before going to try and avoid those stories and those situations. And certainly many examples of being misunderstood or just not understood in meetings. Again, that's certainly an accent thing. But yeah, I always took the view, and I think that this is important. You mentioned the go-to-market strategy, and I think with all these international markets, there's so many potential markets, but you really need to choose. You need to do your homework, so you need to understand the markets culturally and otherwise. But it is all part of that go-to-market strategy. Is it, do you have the right product? Is it suitable? Is the culture the same? Is it? Are you trying to sell? Bad example, but de-icer in Dubai. There's not that much call, for de-icer in Dubai. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right fit. And if you do that work, you do that research beforehand, it very much mitigates then the potential for these issues then down the line. There's always an element of language which can be quite challenging, but I think if you do that homework first of all, visit if you can. Typically not possible, but it's good if you've obviously been to the country, and then it just makes life so much easier down the line when you get in those those scenarios of things. But as I say, touch wood for me. I've always been quite fortunate or quite well planned, maybe, of not really having too many disasters or incidents in a business sense. But certainly lots of instances where the language has been a challenge, a real challenge for sure.
So now we talk about strategy based on the research, based on your product USP, and based on really willingness and capabilities within a team, how hungry they are and they want to get into the market.
Yeah.
Now, not everything obviously can be sorted by automation and AI. Moving on swiftly to the conversation of research, obviously, and getting in. How do you see AI, automation, all of the changes can help with go-to-market strategy? How that will reshape the way that we sell internationally?
So I think, without stating the obvious, AI is here to stay for sure. It's already here. And I think as a business, if you're not already using that to some degree, you're already getting left behind because everyone else is, right? So you really have to start to use it, and not just a quick search on ChatGPT for some content or a couple of prompts on there. It's obviously getting more and more involved. So I think the research is part of it for sure. That can be done a lot easier now. But I think for me, where AI really works, or is really working at the moment, is from a marketing and a lead generation perspective. So I think that's really key, because one of the biggest challenges, whether it's domestic or export sales, is identifying and finding and selecting the right customers or prospective customers. So that's always a challenge. But I think if you're using the technology now that's there, that can be really useful, I think, to get that initial shortlist. And then I think we still need this hybrid approach. So the technology's there, AI is there, you really have to be using that now, but you do still need that hybrid approach. It is still true that it's the old saying that people buy from people, right? So, AI can definitely support what you're doing, but unless your sale is a super transactional, like an e-com sale for, for 15 quid kind of thing, the personal engagement there is still key, because you get to a point maybe with AI, but you still have to lead the buyer through their buying process. If you're selling something substantial, you need to lead them through that, because there's a good chance they don't probably understand their own buying process, because they might not have one, even in the business. So you really still need to then use the technology, but you do need the personal aspect, and you've really got to get into bed with the buyer, or buyers plural, and really just walk through the buying process, because, as I say, they may not know it. They may not know their own buying process themselves, if there even is one. So yeah, absolutely use the technology. It can help to accelerate what we're doing, but you still need that hybrid approach in the personal aspect.
I love your take on buyer or buyers, and they might not know the buyer process. This is so useful for any international and domestic sales, even because we assume things that when we sell things, people know how to buy. We need to help them to buy, and reflecting on the education piece, that that's something we can recognize. And and another challenge that I can see is that we typically assume that the person who asks us to visit or to have a call, that is ultimately the person who will pay. But we quite often, that person was tasked by someone to make some research. You had some interesting conversations. So this is not your end user or end, like the person who will press the buy button. It is the one who will influence whether press that play. So the buyer or buyers, and what's the process. It's fantastic example of how we can use that human approach to actually find that nuance. Absolutely. Because we can't even find online.
Absolutely, and you're right. Typically, you're not dealing with the decision maker. It could be an influencer, or it could just be the information gatherer, but typically not the decision maker. Again, as you get a bit older, you get a bit more experienced, you then have the confidence to ask that question probably quite early on in the process, and try and understand what is their decision-making process. They may not know it because there may not be one, but try and understand what is the process. A great question to ask is, other than, so if it was you and I, Bart, if I was selling to you, I would probably say, so something like, so other than you, Bart, who else is involved in the decision-making process from your side? Or if we were arranging a meeting, between you and I would be saying, okay, so who else? So to get the most from that meeting, who else do we needs to join us? Who else is involved in the decision-making process? So you're not undermining you by saying, oh, can I meet your boss? But you're just kind of subtly saying, so who else do we need? And they'll probably say, well, maybe my boss, or whoever. Like, it gives you a bit of an insight into that, because a lot of the time you pitch to the wrong person. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but yeah.
This is such a powerful, everyone who's listening us, this is just add to your playbook, add to your sales scripts, ask the questions, who else is involved, and ask that question politely. and the reason sometimes sales won't happen is because of that reason. It's just we don't speak to the right people. I think good example is, again, quite often when we buy things like, I don't know, let's say carpet, and it's not the man who is coming, it's just the woman who's choosing that color, and we've been approached by lots of people are like, listen, I'm just here, like, I'm just driver, it's and that good conversation with good decision maker, and even inside the family, like a small sales, not corporate and international sales, will help big time.
Absolutely. I think it's the old thing, isn't it? If you ask good questions, you'll get good answers, or you've got a chance of getting good answers. So I think, good, nice simple questions like that are universal. You can ask them, doesn't offend anyone. You can ask anybody that question. But really, really valuable to try and just guide the buyer, really, because again, being aware of the fact that they probably don't know the process, unless they're a real big organization and there may be a real documented process to go through, but for most people it's not like that, so they probably don't know the process because there probably isn't one from their side. So again, it's as you get a bit older, a bit more experienced, it's easier to try and take the lead with the dialogue and try and kind of navigate through the hurdles that are there.
Now, GTM strategy, go-to-market strategy, and how does this shape in the era of automation, AI, video calls? Obviously, we talk about the human part, which is important. So traditionally, obviously, as a distributor's route, it is, e-commerce still in place, like Amazon. Yeah. What is your take on this? Is that new channel appearing like more than others at the moment? Is it traditional way of pushing through like big chains, depending obviously on the product? But as a general rule, how would you approach that channels for G2M, any kind that is applying to kind of most of the countries?
Yeah, and I think again it goes back to that research piece at the beginning. So I think you have to be clear on what your actual value proposition is for a market. So what are you selling? Why will customers buy your probably unknown brand? Because if it's a new export market, so it's probably an unknown brand. It's probably more expensive in the market because you've got to get it there. So why would they buy that as against established, recognised, maybe cheaper products in the marketplace? Is it better? Is it different? Is it new? Is it cheaper? Maybe. So I think you've got to understand all that first. Once you then understand that, then another question is, what does your supply chain, or what is your ideal supply chain look like in the market? And that is, as you say, it could be, is it a B2C e-com sale through your own channel, through Amazon, through eBay, through lots and lots of other marketplaces that exist? If it's sold through a retailer, like a bricks and mortar retailer, can you sell direct to that retailer? That's where you can maximize the margin, but will they import it? Do they have a warehouse? Do they want to do that? Or will they want to work with a local distributor? Maybe. Do you need a distributor in the market? That takes some of your margin, obviously, but do you need that distributor to try and do the legwork then in the market and do the marketing activity there? So there's various different models here that you can look at. So I think it's just about understanding that, doing the research, and again having that thought through, that well thought out plan that you can then implement. So a lot of the work is done, I think, from an export perspective. A lot of the work is done before you go to that market, because if you get it wrong in export, it can be quite costly, quite expensive to fix that, depending where it is and where the market is. So you really got to get that research right at the beginning, at the get-go, from an export perspective.
Excellent. That great kind of overview of how to plan. And obviously it is tough. Highly recommended to speak to Alan for go-to-market strategy and look and review what you've got. But also talk to people, talk to your communities around. That will help. The one who achieved the success, because there's no silver bullet to questions like this. I've got 2 remaining questions before we wrap up, which is technology. So managing teams, they might be scattered all over the world. Zooms. Obviously, everyone's get used to it. Now, obviously, more sophisticated ChatGPT. I think all the SaaS apps and ecosystem is growing massively. Zoom Info, lots of different things. What is your take on technology? What technology do you use, or you like to use to push things forward quicker once you succeed? Any take on technology and GTM strategy?
So again, market by market. Again, it's part of the research. So you have to understand in each market, what do people use? How do people communicate? Because everyone thinks it's WhatsApp, but it's really not. So in many markets, it is. So it could be probably unlikely now, but it could be text. It's typically WhatsApp, more so even than email in a business sense.
This is interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people do business on WhatsApp now, way more than email. But you've got WhatsApp, you've got Line, 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 which is used in Thailand and various other countries.
Wow.
You've got WeChat in China, there's Viber, there's loads and loads of different platforms there. So I think it's about just, again, understanding the market and identifying what is the platform that's used in that market, because you could be trying to get a hold of someone on WhatsApp and not responding, not because they're ignoring you, but because they just don't use it here now, or there now. So so messaging platforms are really invaluable. I find at times sometimes people are more responsive to maybe a WhatsApp message or a WeChat message or a LinkedIn message than an email. Because an email comes in during the day, it gets lost in the other, however many other emails, so that person gets 100, 200 more, during the day. Whereas sometimes it's easier with a notification pops up on the mobile phone. Sometimes it's easier actually to get a response. Depends what the topic is. So I think these platforms are all good. LinkedIn is absolutely invaluable because it's such a great free, I know you can pay for elements of it, but it's such a good free tool. So widely used now, pretty globally. There's not that many markets now, developed markets anyway, where it's not used. So it's a great tool. People are largely responsive, I find, on LinkedIn. I did a study a few years ago on LinkedIn messaging and found that on average it took 3 messages to get a reply from people. So
wow.
An intro type message, a chaser, and then another chaser, and that was generally when people were replying. Obviously some people sooner, some people never, but as a general rule, it took me generally 3 messages to try and get a response from people. That's a mixture of people that you know or people you maybe don't know quite so well. So you need that iterative type approach. But the old-fashioned way as well, Bart, can't be beaten, and that is getting on the phone and actually speaking to people.
Love it.
It's a video call, a phone call, a meeting. Messaging's brilliant and it's good, it's convenient, and it's really useful. But I think to actually have a conversation should be the end game of that messaging, is to try and get the appointment in inverted commas. And it's a call, it's a video call, it's an actual face-to-face meeting. If possible, you still cannot beat a face-to-face, an actual in-person meeting with someone. There's nothing like it. It's not as convenient as this on video, but for the right opportunity, it's absolutely worth the investment in time and energy and effort to do that, because there still is nothing quite like that in-person contact.
I love the final thought about the calls. You're right, and sometimes we are all overwhelmed with lots of messages and apparently the incentives around us, and that little call can help us sort the problem that you maybe chase wrong tail, and that's the lost opportunity, and you just have that fate like, well, this is maybe the opportunity because they never reply to my email. Maybe they're on holidays. Give it a call, see what it is. Just be straightforward, and that's you're gonna be far quicker with with your what we call pipeline. And it works across international.
Sure, and I think obviously, as you know, through things like HubSpot, the technology is there now. When you're sending emails, the technology is there and pretty good now that you can track whether that email has been opened.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's when it's not been opened, I think that's sometimes more useful than actually knowing when it has been opened, because then if they haven't, because you can be sitting waiting on a reply or a response to something. If you've got the right software and the right technology, you actually can identify that they haven't even opened the email. So it changes what you do, and it changes how you chase. You're not chasing to understand what they thought about the proposal because they haven't even read it yet. So you're trying to get them to open it is the first thing. So again, it's just having that use of technology. So it's you've got to embrace that technology. Things like that, they're not new. That's been around for years, as you know, as you introduced me 2 years ago. But I think using AI, and we're not just talking about Chat GPT here. We're talking about automation and virtual assistants, smart assistants, stuff like that. If you're not using that fully in a few years' time, you're going to be so far behind businesses that are, because it's all coming, and you have to embrace that now. It's a non-negotiable, really. You have to do this.
Alan, the final question, very short answer, I expect, and to wrap it up. How do you sell while still maintaining as a human touch?
So use the technology, for sure, because you have to, because everyone else is. So you have to. So use the technology, but don't neglect that personal relationship. Because I think this is quite simple, right? If people do not like you or trust you, guess what? They will buy elsewhere. It's really simple. So use everything that's around you, but you have to still focus on that personal relationship.
Alan, fantastic. Thank you very much for all your time and loads to take away. Thank you very much for what you shared with us. And definitely we're going to link up your LinkedIn for anyone who is listening and enjoying that conversation to connect with you. Alan, it was my pleasure. Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bart. It's been my pleasure.
Let's build a business based on H to H, not B2B, but human-to-human sales and marketing automation. A human approach is the only one that sells.